No, there we go.
Hey, good
All
evening,
right.
everyone.
Oh, hey, Carlos. So good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. This is the Wednesday, March 26th, 2025 meeting of the Somerville Community Preservation Committee. I am the chair, Ryan Kirikoff. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Somerville Community Preservation Committee will be conducted via remote participation. We will have a video recording available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. Roberta, could you please call the roll for the committee members?
Yes. David,
Yes.
Heather,
Present.
Carlos,
Present.
Mary Jo,
Present.
Eric,
Here.
Michael,
Here.
John,
Here.
Joe,
Yeah, it's not working.
and yes, got you. And Ryan.
Present.
That is all of you. Everyone is present.
Thank you. And before we move into the annual public hearing, Roberta, do we need to approve the minutes from last month?
Yes, I didn't include that on the agenda, did I?
I don't believe so, but I'll just open up for any comment. Anybody with comments or questions about the minutes from last month? Okay, hearing none, can I have a motion to approve last month's minutes as drafted?
I'll make that motion.
I have a second.
I'll second.
All right, and I will call the roll. Heather,
Yes, affirmative.
David,
Yes.
Carlos,
Yes.
Mary Jo,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Michael,
Aye.
John,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and Ryan.
Yes.
Did I miss any of you? All right, I counted wrong on my fingers.
Very good. Thank you for that. Okay, so with that, I think then we can officially open the virtual annual public hearing for the Community Preservation Committee. So I'll pass over to Roberta in a moment to kick us off and give some background on the CPC and what this event is. In the meantime, I think I'll give an overview of what I understand to be the format for tonight. Roberta, Eric, Albers, please correct me if otherwise. So we'll have a number of invited speakers to offer testimonial related to the CPC and their experience or generally comments about the CPC. We'll try to hold each of the speaking portions to approximately 15 minutes, including a brief Q&A. I believe after each, we'll open up for committee members first to ask questions or make comments of the speaker. And then if there are any questions or comments from the public related to that speaker, we'd invite those as well. So folks from the general public, if you'd like to share comments using the poll feature of Zoom, you can do so at any time so that we will capture your comments, even if you don't remain into the end, either the end of the entire meeting or to the end of an individual speaker. With time permitting, if there are general comments from the public, we'll read those out loud at the end of the hearing if folks are not there to speak for themselves. Folks can also use the raise hand function on Zoom to let us know that you have a question or comment for one of the speakers. And I'll note that any members of the general public must have their full name in their Zoom profile in order to be invited to speak. So with that, if no further questions or anything about process, I'll hand over to Roberta to kick off the introduction.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And I just wanted to mention that for people who would like to submit written comments, as Ryan suggested, I just put into the chat a link to a form that you can fill out that will receive the written comments. We would love to hear from you in person, but if you don't make it through the meeting, we will read those comments aloud in the meeting, if that's your preference. So with that, I will share the Zoom. I will share the presentation and give a brief overview of the Community Preservation Act program and the purpose of the testimony that we're hearing tonight, the decisions that the committee is facing this spring that they're looking for public and stakeholder testimony about. So I am going to show the slideshow from the beginning. And can you all see the slideshow?
Yes.
Okay. So, first of all, what we are doing right now, every year, the Community Preservation Committee undertakes a process of developing its annual plan, which describes the goals and priorities for spending the Community Preservation Act funds over the next year. The things that are determined in the Community Preservation Act plan each year are the program area distribution, what the community needs and priorities are, and to define the application process and program guidelines so that we can invite people to apply for funds that reflect these needs and priorities. Just a brief background on the Community Preservation Act program. Massachusetts law was enacted in 2000 that allows cities and towns who choose to adopt CPA to create a fund for grant making for open space, affordable housing, historic preservation, and recreation. So far, 200 communities have signed on to the Community Preservation Act, of which Somerville adopted in 2012. So we've had it for over 10 years. And just this past fall, voters in Somerville increased the amount of funding that goes to the Community Preservation Act program by increasing the surcharge on local real estate property tax from 1.5% to 3%. So I will show how that is going to impact the budget on the next slide. We used to be eligible to put an optional city appropriation into the CPA fund, but that could only bring us up to 3%. And now that we are collecting 3% surcharge, the only other source of funding is a state match. And there's more information about the Community Preservation Act program on our webpage, which you can find on the city's website. And there's this lovely video that was made by high school students a few years ago that tells lots about the Community Preservation Act program. I highly recommend it. So what our funding has looked like historically, in the last several years, we have raised through the property tax surcharge approximately $3 million, right around $3 million. The state match has fluctuated between a low of 17% in 2018 to a high of 44% in 2022. And so that has brought us, in the first few years, there were city appropriations. Those petered out. And in the last several years, it was only the surcharge and the state match. So that's brought us a little over $3 million a year over the last several years. And with the new surcharge, which will be going into effect this fiscal year, we will be generating double the revenue. And that brings us to just about $7 million even of anticipated revenue this year. This is not our official estimate yet, but this is just a ballpark estimate to give us an idea of what the change in funding is going to be. So looking backwards, what we funded this past year, we had our annual appropriation of approximately 50% to the Affordable Housing Trust. This slightly less than 50% reflects the fact that we're also paying debt service on Affordable Housing Trust bonds in the past. So that's why it looks like it's below 50% when the CPC has committed to giving the Affordable Housing Trust 50%. We have also funded 4 historic preservation projects, one of which is actually also an affordable housing project with the Somerville Community Land Trust. Elizabeth Peabody House, Veterans Cemetery, and Somerville Museum, preserving some additional artifacts, are also recipients of historic preservation funding. And we funded for 3 park improvements and a contribution to the Open Space Acquisition Fund. So the amount of open space and recreation funding was about 34% of last year's spending, and historic preservation was about 17% last year. And over the whole history of the program, from FY15 to FY25, we've spent about 56% on affordable housing, 24% on historic preservation, and 20% on open space and recreation. And this includes bonding for the 100 Homes program, Clarendon Hill, and the West Branch Library. And I just have a couple of maps that show where the projects have been located of different varieties. This map needs to be updated. It's missing the most recent projects that have been added. So this shows by ward where the projects are located. And this map compares the environmental justice neighborhoods with project locations, showing the distribution of CPA funding across the city. And one more interesting point about the impact of CPA funds is how they've leveraged funding from other sources. So in the open space and recreation category, the city is typically seeking grants that CPA is used to match, so that CPA funds have contributed about $8 million, and that has enabled the city to bring in another $20 million of funding from other sources to complete projects that we funded in the open space category. In the historic preservation category, approximately $10 million of CPA funds have been matched 1-to-1 with funding from other sources. In this case, there have been some government grants, as well as funding from private fundraising has gone to a lot of the historic preservation. And with respect to affordable housing, CPA has generated about $19 per every dollar of CPA funds spent for affordable housing projects, for affordable housing construction projects. And there's 2 ways of looking at this. One is that we're bringing investment beyond the amount that we're spending, but we're also facilitating projects that might not have happened had the CPA funds not been available. And if the $19 per isn't available from all of the other funding sources, CPA is going to have to put in more to enable those projects to be able to get off the ground. And we have also contributed to affordable housing programs, and those have leveraged funding from other sources, approximately 1-to-1. So that's a background on what we have done with CPA funds. Now looking ahead at the application process, we have a draft of what the application process will look like for this year. The key timelines for applying for funds are on this table. By the way, for the benefit of everyone who's watching the presentation, the meeting packet is available on the CPC's webpage in the document library under meeting packets, and you can find this presentation and all of the other presentations that are shown this evening in that meeting packet, so you can access this information later. And the links on the presentations are also live links, so you can find the application forms for the CPA screening form, which is optional for all applicants, but recommended. That helps me to provide you with the level of support that you need to be able to initiate the application process and to answer any questions that you have. And then the eligibility determination form is due in July 15, and the full application is due September 15. And we're making a few minor modifications to the application process this year from what we have done in previous years. Happy to answer questions about that. So one of the big decision points that the committee has that they're going to be considering this spring based on the testimony this evening and based on the survey and public engagement and input that I'm gathering from city staff and colleagues. The committee needs to consider what will the allocation be between the program areas in FY26. Somerville's CPC has customarily elected to set the distribution between the program areas in advance, as shown in the middle column. This is what the distribution has been for the last several years. The state minimum required is in the leftmost column, just 10% for each category. But Somerville has typically elected to predetermine how much to distribute to the categories. And we're also considering updates to our goals and priorities. This slide shows a summary of what's on the next several slides. I'll read through this slide and just flip through the next slides without taking the time to read them, but I would encourage people to take a look at it and send us comments on the specific goals if you have. So the overall priorities are projects consistent with community values of equity, accessibility, and sustainability, projects that are strategically advantageous. Affordable housing priorities are to create affordable housing to meet community needs and to prevent homelessness through helping people access housing they can afford. Open space priorities have been to expand access to open space and recreation opportunities and to protect natural resources. Historic preservation priorities have been to make historic buildings safe and accessible and to preserve Somerville history. So these are the detailed versions of those goals and priorities that I've just summarized. So the last thing is that we'll accept written comments through April 11, and you can share your ideas also by taking the CPA survey, which you can find on the CPA webpage, and encourage folks to share that. The survey will be open through April 6. And that is all I have again.
Excellent. Thank you, Roberta. All right. With that, I think we can hand over to our first speaker. We're right on time. So that's great. Thank you. So I believe we'll start with the Office of Housing Stability, if Ellen is here.
I am. Hello, everybody. Thanks. Hi. So I'm Ellen Schachter, the director of the city's Office of Housing Stability. And for those that don't know, OHS, what we call our office, has a dual mission. First, to provide direct services to prevent displacement of Somerville residents and to assist those that need to relocate in moving into appropriate alternate housing. And second, OHS works to put in policies at the local level and the state level that address root causes of homelessness, expand funding for affordable housing, and enhance tenants' rights to better enable tenants to remain in their homes. With that little background, I first wanted to give a huge shout out to Roberta Cameron and the CPA committee, both for 10 fantastic years of CPA work and funding, and also for a really fantastic 2024 CPA report, which I read to get ready for this, and I just learned a lot from. So a big thank you for that. So now that you have this referendum that has just passed and a doubling of CPA funds, this presents a really historic opportunity to expand the role of CPA in keeping low and moderate income tenants in Somerville and to expand open space and support historic preservation. For the reasons I will now discuss, I urge the committee to increase the allocation to affordable housing to a minimum of 60% of CPA funds. So why? What's the need I'm seeing? What do we see in OHS every day? Just 2 years ago in 2022, the average monthly Somerville rents were $2,631. Today, or by the end of 2024, the average monthly Somerville rents have climbed to $3,300 a month, according to apartments.com, and $3,689 a month, according to Zillow. Even using this lower figure, this means rents have increased 25% in the last 2 years. This also means that a Somerville family would need an income of $130,200 a year to afford the average Somerville rental. I want to tell you a little bit about what we are seeing in OHS every day. Since our office opened in 2019, we've received approximately 1,500 requests for services each year. In this last week, 1 week alone, we received 41 new requests for services, about 8 new households a day. In the vast majority of people that are reaching out for our services are families facing eviction, families paying more than 50% of their income in rent, households facing large rent increases or facing building sales where they're at risk of displacement. About 50% of the households that we assist through our rental assistance and related programs speak a language other than English at home. Most have minor children, are seniors, people with disabilities, and immigrant populations. Most, if they are not already in subsidized housing, are in desperate need of rental assistance and deeply subsidized affordable units where rent is based on income for the long term. I want to give you some scope of need in addition to sort of OHS requests for services that continues to shock me each year as it grows more and more dire. We meet with the Somerville Housing Authority yearly. I'm part of something called the Resident Advisory Board, where we comment on new policies and exchange data and information. In its last 2024 report, October 2024, looking at the previous 12-month period, the Somerville Housing Authority at the time of the report had 1,735 households on their wait list for federal family public housing. 431 of those families are Somerville families. In the entire year prior to that report, 2 families had received offers of housing. This means if we were looking at the need compared to the availability, it would sadly take 200 years for all families that are on that list that need deeply affordable housing to be served. Similarly, with our elderly and disabled population, there were, I'm just going to skip to Somerville families because there's a lot more others, but there were 271 seniors on this list for Somerville elderly disabled public housing, and only 4 of those households were placed in new housing units that became available. So I wanted to give you this just to give you a sense of what the need is and what we are seeing, even in light of all of the great work that's coming on to bring new units. One thing I did want to say is that most of the new units coming on board through inclusionary programs and other programs are often available to folks at 50% of AMI and up, whereas we are seeing the greatest need in the city of Somerville for more deeply affordable units. As you yourselves recognized, I saw in one of your goals was to reach that lowest level of 30% of AMI below. And so a couple of things that I just wanted to say about this. You know, we know that CPA funds have been used so successfully over the years to develop new affordable housing. However, I think you all do know this and understand this, but we will never be able to build enough deeply affordable housing to meet the needs of Somerville families. This means we have to do everything we can to keep residents in their homes. One of the best ways to keep Somerville tenants in their homes is through nonprofit purchase of buildings that are put up for sale. This removes them from the speculative market and enables income eligible tenants to remain in their homes over the long term. CPA has been an invaluable tool for such purposes. You heard Roberta talk about $6 million in bonding that went to the 100 Homes program. We know this is needed more than ever. What we have seen as the single largest driver of displacement from the city is buildings being put up for sale. If those buildings don't get sold to nonprofits, but instead go out on the open market to investors, they are the key, that is the key driver of displacement. So we know this 100 Homes program has to expand, and sadly, we know prices have increased dramatically in order to produce that housing, so that the need for local match is going to be that much greater. 1 second, sorry. In addition to helping the 100 Homes program, CPA funds incredibly important rental assistance resources, your PASS program, which is a 1 to 2 year temporary subsidy program while people get back on their feet, rental assistance, and others. And I wanted to call out 2 new programs that the Office of Housing Stability has started in the last few years. And we believe that we will be needing to come to the CPA for funding for these incredibly important programs. So what are these 2 programs? The first is called the Municipal Voucher Program. I'm going to tell you very briefly what that is. And the second is what we call the Flex ARPA or Flex SAHTF program. Both of these are funneled and funded through the Affordable Housing Trust. I know all your money goes through the Affordable Housing Trust, but I did want to give you a sense of what some additional needs beyond what you have seen recently are for continuing some really, really critical programs. Our Municipal Voucher Program is one of the only in the state and country that is serving the purpose that it is now, which is to provide city-funded, deeply affordable subsidies to keep people permanently housed or housed over the long term that otherwise simply would be displaced. We prioritize people who are ineligible for federal housing subsidies and people with children in the public schools. With this program, we've been able to keep in Somerville 29 Somerville families that otherwise would have been displaced from our city at this time, which has been incredibly important. We also, through our Flex ARPA program, this is a rental assistance program that has been designed to sort of be so flexible that it meets all the needs we see and kind of plugs the gaps in other rental assistance programs. It provides both rental arrears and prospective rental assistance. And with this program, in the last 2 years, we've prevented 415 Somerville families from becoming homeless at a cost of about $9,000 per family. Both of these programs, which have been incredibly successful, have been funded with ARPA funds. And you all know ARPA funds are exhausted or in the process over the next few months of being exhausted. And the other sources of funding that we've had for these programs have been one-time allocations. And I do just want to let you know the Affordable Housing Trust Fund did make a big contribution to the Municipal Voucher Program and out of linkage funds in the past. But as these ARPA funds go away, this is going to be a whole new set of programs that we are really, really hoping to keep funding because they're so critical to the work that we're doing in the city. And we're really hoping that CPA can be one of those sources of new funding. I did just want to say, in sort of with all of this together, I know that you face, you're looking at, first of all, you're looking at a historic opportunity. For the first time, you're probably the only ones here that are going to be saying, hey, we have double our funding this year, which is really exciting. What I did want to say is that I do feel like this provides you with the opportunity to increase your allocation for affordable housing and still be able to increase funding for open space and historic preservation. I know all three of these things are important, and I in no way mean to say, one thing is so much more important than the other. They all need to happen. But I will say the crying need for both new affordable housing, for purchasing through the 100 Homes program, and for keeping people in their homes through rental assistance is just a screaming one. I really hope that you will see this, that you will consider increasing that allocation, and just a really exciting time, because I know all the projects that you fund are going to be absolutely critical to the city. So thank you, and I'm here and available if anybody has any questions. I also know Lisa Davidson is here and we'll be talking also about housing issues. So, but otherwise happy to answer any questions you might have at the end, or I don't know how you're doing this, Roberta, but I'm here.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ellen. Thanks for the testimony and thanks for all your good work. So I think we do have just a couple minutes. I want to open up for anybody on the committee that would like to ask questions or make comments on Ellen's testimony.
I have a quick question. So with the ARPA funding leaving, what is the funding gap that you're trying to look to fill? Like, do you know kind of what numbers for both?
What I can say is that we currently have funding for our Flex rental assistance program that has been so successful, that runs out in approximately April of 2026. So we will be looking ahead of that period, both to right size the program a little bit, so to make the criteria a little narrower, because we now will have to sort of have ongoing funding. So I don't want to give you a dollar amount now. I will say we've been spending like $2 million a year on that program. So we know that that is a lot of money. And we're going to sort of be looking at what can we do that feels reasonable going forward. We did have we had allocations from free cash in the past 2 fiscal years that also went into a fund that's sitting at the Affordable Housing Trust. So right now we've exhausted ARPA funds for that program, and we've been using this free cash. But we do know that towards the end of this next fiscal year, we're going to be running out of funds and needing to figure out all different ways to try to fund these programs, hopefully with CPA really being a part of that.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the committee? I do have 2 questions myself, but I want to give anybody else a chance. Okay, I'll jump in, and then if any others, we can close out. So my 2 questions are both about the municipal voucher program. Number one is it dependent upon finding landlords that are willing to accept a voucher payment? I would guess that the answer is yes to that. The second part is, has your office ever considered doing project-based municipal vouchers, if that's even possible? It's a means of both helping families trying to find housing within Somerville, and also helping developers make affordable housing more feasible financially by their ability to underwrite that.
So I think someone's going to think you planted that question to me, because the answer is, so there's three components to the program. We have 12 project-based vouchers that are all project-based in SCC properties to really decrease the income level. So they are maybe targeted at 80 or 100% of area median income. And we're able to get that down to almost between 0 and 30% for most of those families. So 12 of the vouchers are project-based. We have 14 were what we call lease in place. We anticipated the difficulty of launching this program, having a whole lot of people trying to look for landlords to rent to these vouchers. So we gave a priority for people that met all our criteria, but were in housing. We could put those vouchers and stabilize them where they were. And then there were about 5 folks who were looking out on the open market. All but 1 have now found placement. So 1 is still looking, everybody else is housed, but we really did worry about that issue, knowing how hard it is. And we did put a lot of the lease in place. I will say we also have some incentives that are built into the municipal voucher program to help sort of have a carrot for landlords to participate, because we know how hard it is, especially now that rents have risen so high. And I will say, you'll see, just like with the housing authorities and all programs, payment standards have gone up a lot. So rents are up a lot. So it costs more per voucher to run the program than it would have even a few years ago. So thank you for that question. A really good question.
Understood. Thanks, Ellen. Okay, any more from the committee? I think we can do one more, and then I'll ask Roberta to check if there's any public question. Okay, hearing none. Roberta, any questions from the general public?
I see none.
Okay, well, with that, I think we can let you go. Thank you so much, Ellen.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks. Okay, let's go now to, next on my list is the Department of Infrastructure and Asset Management. Is Rich on?
I am. Roberta, do you want to share the presentation or should I?
I will share the presentation. I'm
Excellent.
pulling it up right now.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the CPA for hearing us and also for its past investments in our buildings. We're currently rehabilitating the clock tower and slate roof of City Hall with some city funds, some ARPA funds, and some CPA funds. Got photos of the restored clock mechanism just today. I'll send them on to Roberta so she can send them on to you. It is a very impressive mechanism. Anyway, on to the presentation. We do have a growing need for additional capital investments in our historic buildings. And Somerville does have a decent portfolio of buildings that are of historic significance. We've got the Cross Street Center at 165 Broadway, City Hall itself, the adjacent 1895 building, which is the now vacated wing of the old high school, the Walnut Street, which was originally a courthouse and had been the home of Parks and Recreation for a long time, the Edgerly building, which had been used for, which was originally the vocational technical high school in the city and had been used for Somerville Public School administrative offices, but we had to put it into use for education again when we had the incident at the Winter Hill School. So Winter Hill is currently operating out of Edgerly. The Armory, which is home for Arts at the Armory, purchased a friendly taking a few years back to preserve that cultural hub. 9092 Union, colloquially known as the SCAT building. Central Library, which is of historical significance, and also there is a field house at Potter House Rotary, which at least up until a few minutes ago, according to the helicopters that were flying over my head, was the site of a demonstration for an ICE deportation of a Tufts student. All of these buildings are historically significant and require a significant amount of work. We've got several master plans that help us understand what those building needs are. We've done exhaustive engineering and architecture investigation into those buildings and have documented those findings. For the most part, all of those buildings generally have good bones, but are in need of upgrades and renovations, particularly around ADA compliance, but also modern code, and in some instances, just sort of deteriorated conditions. The building master, go back one, please.
Sorry.
Yeah, so to take a little bit deeper dive in there, which I recommend anybody do, the building master plan, which is linked in this document, focuses on office space, and the three primary buildings identified for municipal office space are City Hall, the 1895 building, and eventually the Edgerly Education Center, once we build a new Winter Hill School and get Winter Hill out of there. the idea is to rationalize the location of departments, to improve the customer experience for anyone doing business with the city, to improve the office environment for our city employees, and co-locate sister departments that have a lot of work in common to deliver more efficient municipal services. The Community Services and Activities report focuses more on, community services and activities, open space for programs, for a broad range of demographics, teens, elderly, pretty much any space that would be publicly accessible or support any program. The large historic building that's really focused on that is 165 Broadway, the Cross Street Center, which is in need of code compliance, ADA, needs an elevator to really maximize that space, which is an old fire station. And then finally, the Armory Master Plan. When we took the building, the previous owner had neglected a lot of maintenance in that building. So that building needs a lot of attention in the details of both the use of the building and the enumeration of the work that needs to be done is in that Armory Master Plan. A lot of, you can go to the next slide, Roberta. A lot of the discussion in terms of the programming for the CSA and the Armory had been informed by previous community needs assessments that are linked on this subsequent slide. This one focuses a little bit more on the programming needs and what the community needs are around those services that can then be housed in the buildings as renovated in the CSA. So, again, sort of the key findings are that in general, Somerville has a serious need for shared spaces and flexibility for a variety of different programmatic needs. We simply don't have enough space for the programs we offer, and we certainly don't have enough space for the municipal employees. In general, we currently have twice as many employees as we do desks for those employees. So out of need, everyone is hoteling, which is having an impact on the efficiency of our delivery of municipal services. Another thing that is an underlying theme, particularly for teen services, is a balance of geography for those services. Even though we're only 4.2 square miles, there really is a need and a desire for these things to be at the neighborhood scale. And again, particularly with these buildings of historical significance, we have a lot of ADA issues and areas in the buildings or entire buildings that are not handicap accessible. So that's a primary need in these buildings to leverage them and keep them going. And you can see in the laundry list of programs that are in need of these spaces. So on the next slide, our challenges really are currently around available funding. Many people may have heard about the judgment against our taking of 90 Washington Street, which had been intended for the public safety building. Because of that judgment and the amount of money that the city has to pay that former property owner, our capital plans for the next several years are being hamstrung. Add into that the sort of slowing economy, and which will then mean a slowing of growth. The growth, particularly in Assembly Square and in Union Square and in Boynton Yards, had really been fueling our growth, both for municipal services and for our capacity to take on debt to do building renovations like this. And sort of the combination of those two things are hampering our ability to bond and do these, which really raises the importance of CPA funds so that we can do these much needed projects. We also have needs that are not CPA eligible that are high priority. Outside of the Winter Hill, most of our school buildings were built in the 90s and early 2000s, which means that they're hitting that sort of vintage 30-year mark, which is where you expect the mechanical systems, the boilers, the air conditioners to start failing, and they are failing right on schedule. So a lot of our capital investments are in those school buildings because it's sort of non-negotiable keeping those open. We just replaced the chiller at the Kennedy. We're planning in the next 2 years to replace the chiller at the West and the boiler at the Healy. And these are expensive projects that are taking up a lot of our bandwidth. So for us to be able to tackle these historic buildings and really open them up for additional programming, we will be relying on CPA funds. We're on the next slide. We're constantly in planning process. We do have a few properties that have been identified for use, and other properties that we may divest from, sell them so that we can afford some of these other things. But generally, there's that ongoing planning for our CIP and properties. So, well, with that, I'm happy to sort of open up for questions and see what you all want to hear about.
Any questions from my fellow committee members?
I saw Heather raise her hand.
Hi, Heather.
So my question is about the sort of wonderful list of community spaces that you put up, and community services and activities report. I've heard periodically the idea of, do you have a multi-generational teen center or something specific to a certain group? Where is the city's thinking about that? Is there thinking about making some sort of community center at this point?
Yeah, it's a good question, one that comes up often. Given where we are in our available funds, and again the priorities in the schools for the repairs, we're not actively pursuing a community center. 165 Broadway is one of the potential locations for that, and a renovation of that building is desperately needed. And a lot of services, teen services included, would be housed at that Cross Street Center. But right now we've got the sort of financial constraints on the ability to move forward with that.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more from the committee, if anything. Okay, sorry, Eric, we come off mute.
It's sort of a basic question. You might have already addressed this partially, but what other funding sources does the city have for this type of work other than our own budget?
Great question. So we did tap ARPA for some much needed what we call asset preservation. Both the 1992 Union Square, the SCAT building, and the 1895 building are currently vacant because of their condition, and being vacant and in poor condition, they were deteriorating rapidly. The elements were getting in to those buildings. So we used ARPA funding to basically winterize and mothball those buildings to stave off additional deterioration of those buildings so that we can then have them when the money is available to fully renovate them. So outside of the ARPA fund, there aren't very many funding sources for these large scale projects that open up programmatic space. We do leverage some environmental incentive grants for modernization and energy efficiency and solar work in some of our other buildings. So we do use that, to sort of defer capital or debt that we would otherwise do for those. But by and large, these projects are funded through city debt.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Roberta, would you mind checking if any public comment?
Again, I see none.
Okay,
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I take that back. I do have a question from a member of the public. I'm going to unmute you. Are you able to?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
My name is Lee Auspitz. You might consider adding to your list of city buildings the charming little white church across from the West Somerville Library, which the city acquired quite a few years ago, and I think underestimated the need for major reconstruction work. So it's been sitting idle for quite, 10 years now?
7 anyway. Yeah.
7.
Yeah. So that building and parcel, which is 45 College Ave, is discussed in the CSA report. The general conclusion is that to address the programmatic needs that we have, which again would include relocating Council on Aging, could potential also share a teen center space, and other general in a community room that was thought of when the West Branch Library was renovated. It has a very small community room. The idea would be to have a larger community room. That build, fortunately, is not very conducive for all of those needs and is in very poor condition. So the concept for that building would be to raise that building and build a new building, basically in accordance with zoning and respectful of the neighborhood, to have the space needed for all the programming that is sort of earmarked for that area.
It's a very historic building. It'd be a pity to raise it. Did you hear that?
yes, we did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other comments from the public, Roberta?
That is all that I see.
Okay, with that, I think we can let Rich go. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Next up, let's go to housing. Is Lisa Davidson on?
Hi, sorry, I was having problems with my little mouse and stuff. So, hi, my name is Lisa Davidson and I'm the interim director for the housing division. Thank you for inviting me here. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the housing division. In the housing division, we really work with the bricks and mortar. We work to deliver safe, affordable, sustainable housing for Somerville residents who could not access housing that meets the criteria on the private housing market. Just to echo some of Ellen's words, I want to thank a shout out to Roberta and the CPA committee for success for a great 10 years providing fundings. And I also want to thank the Somerville residents for voting to increase the CPA surcharge. again, mouse problem, sorry. The increased CPA surcharge from 1.5% to 3% is an opportunity to expand the role of CPA in creating more affordable housing, expand open space, and support historic preservation. I'm here to ask the CPC to consider increasing the allocation from 50% of CPA for the affordable housing. As you know, and as Ellen and Roberta has shared already, the CPC has typically given 50% of the CPA allotment to the Somerville Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And with those monies, the trust has been able to fund multiple programs, 13 programs, to help prevent Somerville residents from becoming displaced. Again, Ellen shared the list of those programs that we fund through the CPA funding. But we also use it to create affordable housing. With these, with the funds we've created, just in the last year, we've committed $4.5 million to create approximately 300 units of housing. Since 2000, just went through that, sorry. 132 units, I'm sorry. The cost of construction increasing, developers are finding themselves having to come back to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to ask for more funding, because when they come to the trust, and by the time they get their permits and get all the other funding wrapped up, now the cost to develop this housing has increased. So we're now finding ourselves to have to increase already what we've committed to housing. The increase to the CPA surge will allow increases to all of the CPA funded categories made available to housing. Monumental challenges for attempting to meet the demands of affordable housing. These demands are here in Somerville. And that's pretty much my presentation. I didn't want to repeat too much of what Ellen was talking about with the programs that we fund, but just a brief little thing. As Ellen said, we do fund prevention and stabilization programs. We've through the trust using CPA money, short-term rental subsidies for up to 2 years. That those funds keep residents in their homes while they look for more permanent supportive housing or more permanent subsidized housing.
Okay, thank you very much for the testimony and for all your work. We appreciate it. Questions, comments from the committee? Roberta?
I'm not a committee member, but I have a question, if I may. I wanted to ask, what is the relationship between the housing stability programs that Ellen talked about and the housing stability programs that the trust has been funding for several years with CPA funds?
What is the relationship between the two different programs, two different funding sources? I mean, the Office of Housing and Stability and the Housing Division collaborate an awful lot. Currently, the CPA monies with the stabilization and the flex funds. Currently, the CPA program is actually limited. We allow up to $3,000 of assistance for opposed to in a lifetime, where Ellen's programs with the flex funds can allow a lot more assistance. We have capped it. The trust has capped the 3,000, really, so make sure that we are able to serve as many households as possible. We are looking to reevaluate what we are currently capped at $3,000. Their municipal voucher program, MVP program, I mean, that's a long-term subsidy where they're getting, I think they received funding for up to 5 or 7 years, where our program, the PASS program, really limits the funding to a 2 years again, they work with the case manager, and it's meant to be able to sort of fill a gap, fill a bridge while they're increasing their income, becoming more self-sufficient, and or are offered housing through other housing authorities with longer term rental subsidies.
Anyone else on the committee? Lisa, what does coordination look like between housing and the infrastructure and asset management folks in terms of identifying parcels or structures that might be suitable for affordable housing development that's already, land that's already in the city's stable?
So you're gonna have to forgive me on this one. I am like 3 weeks into the interim housing director, but I do know that there are conversations about the land, city-owned land, and they are looking into what it can be used at and whether or not we can put it out for a bid to create affordable housing on those. Just recently, one lot, which is over off of Broadway on Sewell Street, was recently transferred over to the Somerville Community Land Trust, where they will be creating some affordable homeownership properties that I think they're getting early action funds. They'll be coming to the trust for funding assistance on that one.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Roberta, any questions from the general public?
I see none.
All right. With that, I think we can let you go, Lisa. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. All right, let's go now to one of our multiple time funded projects, the Elizabeth Peabody House. Is Matthew on?
Yes, indeed, Ryan. I am here.
Hi, Matthew. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for the invite. And I just want to say up front, like everybody else, we really appreciate the investment that the CPA and the commitment the CPC has made to our building as a community resource over the last, I want to say, 7 years, I think since 2018 or FY18. It has made a real difference to what is possible and what opportunities are possible for the future. And so unlike others, I don't have a whole ton of statistics, but I want to kind of paint a picture. So for anybody that's not as familiar, Elizabeth Peabody House has been around for almost 130 years. We've been in this building now in Somerville from 1979 or 1980. So that exact date is unclear, but about 45 years. And so we, throughout our history, have provided early childhood education, school age programs, and community support, whatever that looks like, wraparound social services, wraparound services, whatever that looks like. And so the beauty of CPA funds for us, like we have this beautiful building that sits prominently in Winter Hill, which is often an under-resourced and an underfunded part of Somerville, right? There's always talk about a lack of community space and free community space that really meets the needs of the community. And that's what the CPA has allowed us to try and realize. So we look at the CPA as a kind of parallel track. So the CPA funds the outside of the building and major work that improves the public use of the building on the inside. So 2018, it was the roof replacement. 2019, it was a building assessment. And that building assessments particularly helped us unlock really what we needed to do, set a roadmap for what we could do with the building and what needed fixed. And I'm happy to say that we have worked through almost all of the projects in that building assessment. And so most of our space is safe, it's secure, it's accessible. And we're now at the point now where we're looking around, thanks to CPA funds and other funds, in the past 2 years. So the CPA is funding the outside, the perimeter, making sure it meets the historic preservation, making sure it is prominent in the community, while we then look for other funds to support the renovations on the inside. And I don't know if anybody has been to Peabody House before. I know Roberta has. But if you haven't, you'll come in the last 2.5, 3 years, we've done some serious work on the outside of the building, the inside of the building. And we're in a period now, thanks to CPA and other funds. So CPA have put in, I got my numbers earlier. It looks like about, I wasn't here for it all, about $700,000. And in the last 2 years, we have also then put in around $850,000 on the inside of the building, replacing a boiler, fixing our front ramp, just doing a whole bunch of work, like a whole after school inside renovation. And so this is the piece that I want to paint the picture of, and why I think CPA is an important component of what we're trying to do here. So we are here for the community. We're a community asset, albeit we're owned by the Elizabeth Peabody House. But if the Elizabeth Peabody House tomorrow stopped running programs, this would still be a community asset, open and available to the entire community to meet the community's needs. And that's the beauty of obviously putting money into the kind of nonprofit that we are. But thanks to the CPA, like the last year, the CPA funded a structural reinforcement assessment, and now we've got that back. And so we are working now on raising the money to reinforce the second floor, like which was the old sanctuary. And we're working on a $2 to $2.5 million very early stage capital campaign to turn that into a community center space, multi-function, multi-purpose, fully accessible. And so thanks to the CPA and these two parallel tracks, CPA and other private funds and government funds, I think what we have been able to do in the kind of medium term and approaching the longer term is set Elizabeth Peabody up as a community resource and a community asset that is ready and able to respond to the community's needs for the next 50 years, right? And that's the beauty of what the CPA funds help unlock. That real transformation, preservation, and opportunity to uplift community and meet them where they're at. And so that's my, and I just shout out then to the money that's getting into the Hispanic Association, the Somerville Hispanic Association. We are actually renting the second floor off them now. We opened up a toddler center there this past fall. Actually, it actually officially opened in February. And we're going to start infant care. So like not only that, like your money there is allowing us then to meet more families where they're at and support families. And I think that's the beauty of putting money into buildings that have both historical significance, but also that are for public use owned by nonprofits. Because your investment is there for the long term. And so that's all I've got, unless anybody has any questions.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for the testimony. Thanks for all your work in our community as well. Anybody on the committee with questions for Matthew? Okay, hearing none. Roberta, any online?
No, I see Michael has a question.
Michael, my bad.
It's all good, Ryan. Thank you. Matt, I want to echo Ryan's comments. Thank you for all the work that you do and the greater EPH body. Obviously, we've worked with you a lot in the past, and I'm very proud of that. What do you think 2025 looks like for you? Do you think you're going to put in another application, and how can we help?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, so I think the big thing for us is the structural reinforcement. I'm trying to get to the point where the second floor is assembly load bear, like the bearing is assembly, so I can actually have some real community space up there. And I think that's the next big project for us. I'm talking to a couple of contractors now to get prices and bids and see how long I'll need to shut the building down. So I'll have to move all of my programs to another site for a couple of months, so it's going to take a little bit of coordination, but that's the next big project.
Yeah, that sounds great. I really like the idea, and I think this is the kind of stuff that we want to continue to reinforce. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks everybody.
Anybody else? Questions from Matthew? Roberta, any in the queue?
I see none.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much again for all your work and for the testimonial. All right, we can go now to PSUF. Do we have Allison on? I believe this is our last presenter for the evening.
Hello.
Hey, Allison.
Thanks so much for having me. Roberta, you have my slides, yes?
Yes, I do.
Perfect.
Oh, sorry, I need to share first. I forgot order of operations.
Lisa, our fearless leader, is here too to back us up.
And you should be able to see it.
Right. So good evening. I'm Allison Maurer. I don't believe I've had the pleasure of meeting most of you. I'm the ecological restoration planner for public space and urban forestry. I've been working for the past year on updating our open space and recreation plan, and I'm here to give you a bit of a summary, just a brief summary. It's a big document of what is contained within. I do want to thank my PSUF team for supporting with this effort. They have both been helping to write, edit, and a variety of miscellaneous tasks. I also want to thank you all for providing feedback along the way, for the work you do annually to understand what people's needs are around open space and recreation in Somerville, and for the financial support that you give our projects on a regular basis, which allows us to do so many wonderful things. You can go to the next one. Most of you may know what an OSRP is, but I'm just going to start there just in case anyone doesn't. I'm going to share our project timeline, overarching themes we found in our public engagement, and the goals and action items that are in the OSRP itself. Just a reminder, this document has a lot of content, so this is going to be a little teaser into what is in there. You can go to the next. So an open space and recreation plan is required by the state. It allows us to apply for a variety of funding sources, and it gives us an opportunity to plan for the future of our conservation and recreation resources. That's everything from parks to wooded areas to athletic fields and recreational programming. It's informed by public participation and reflects the needs of community members and stakeholders. It describes the city, both its history and current trends, and it sets the goals for the next 7 years. Just realized I wanted to put a timer on myself so that I didn't go too far over. Okay, you can go to the next one. This is an outline of the document. It's very strictly organized by the state. We follow their guidelines, but then we fill in what's relevant to us within it. I'm highlighting here 7 through 10. Those might be the sections that if you aren't going to read everything, maybe you understand the history of Somerville, but 7 to 10 might be the place that you want to focus your attention if you're going to dig a little deeper into what I'm telling you today. Particularly section 10, the outreach report, goes into a good amount of detail about our survey, community meetings, stakeholder meetings, all of that, and that could inform your work nicely in the future. Next slide. We entered into this process with these 3 questions in mind. What is most important to residents today with regard to open space and recreation? Where are the gaps in our open space and recreation network? And what barriers prevent residents from freely using and enjoying our existing open space and recreation amenities? This framed our engagement approach. Next slide. We started off in winter 2023, releasing a survey. We held some in-person and virtual community meetings, closed the survey with a nice response of 708 entries, and then spent some time in 2024 gathering feedback from committees, commissions, and city staff. We posted the draft plan this year in February, got a bunch of comments from folks, including city staff, stakeholders, in addition to city councilors and public residents. And we are in the process of wrapping it up now. This survey, we were really pleased, but as surveys often go, it was not perfectly representative of our residents. It underrepresented ages 19 to 24, people of color, and the lowest income households. We set up some targeted outreach meetings at the Council on Aging and with teen groups to try to address some of that disparity and get feedback directly from those groups. And we worked with SOIA staff to learn some about what they're hearing from their immigrant networks about open space and recreation needs as well. Next slide. There was a resounding, the biggest green circle there on the bottom. We wanted to do a little temp check. Do people need more open space in Somerville? And most everyone said yes. I think it was just nice to know whether or not everyone still cared about that, and the answer was they do. Next slide. We also asked people what type of open space they want more of in Somerville, and interestingly, trails, passive parks, and access to the water came out on top. Community agriculture was right behind that. And to me, this reflected an interesting pattern that emerged from another question we had posed about the impacts of COVID-19 on the way that people perceive and use parks. And many people responded in those open-ended questions about the importance of parks and trails during COVID as spaces to gather for community and also exercise and a way to be outside. And I wonder if we're seeing those experiences reflected in these needs as well today. Next slide. In our community meetings, a few patterns stood out, specifically needs around accessibility, everything from bathrooms to seating and ped bike conflicts, a desire for more nature, both in and out of parks, between parks, around parks, everywhere, more trees all the time, connections between open spaces that has to do with both wayfinding and the experience between them, variety within open spaces. There was a desire that came through in a lot of feedback we received about layering uses versus, a tot lot just for tots, but versus Lincoln Park, where you can do lots of things in one place. Also a desire for comfort and resilience amenities. That could be anything from water fountains to shade. We also were noticing who we don't see at meetings. And as I touched on, we tried to address some of that, and it's in our targeted outreach. And we also want to be thinking about that in future outreach efforts, both across the city and within PISA. Next slide. This is a list of the stakeholders that we discussed. I'm not going to go into what all of them said, but just to show you who we were talking to and whose voices are reflected within this plan itself. There were a bunch of voices in there. Next slide. We brought those back together and tried to combine them into 5 overarching goals. The first one, acquire and build new open spaces. People still want more open space here. To invest in existing parks and open spaces to preserve and enhance what we already have. Working to make open spaces inclusive, safe, and welcoming for all. Incorporating resilient landscape practices and amenities in open spaces and streetscapes. Ensuring recreation programs and facilities meet the needs of residents today. Go ahead to the next one. The plan sets out these 5 overarching goals, and then it goes into more detail. Section 9 has a big table with lots of actions in it. I'm not going to go into all of those, but I wanted to call out a few that might be relevant to you all. Specifically land acquisition, working on trying to acquire new open space through a variety of streams. We know that CPA is one of the ways that we can do that. Building new open spaces as parcels become available, and continuing our work with private developers to get high quality open space through private development. We want to look at upgrades, not just full renovations. There are a lot of our parks that are in pretty good condition. We don't need to tear everything down and start new in every single park. So we're trying to distinguish 2 different streams, one that's upgrades and one that is, okay, this park's a little too old. Let's begin again. Let's redesign. We want to strive for equitable distribution of inclusive amenities. We want to strive for equitable distribution of water, cooling, trees, biodiverse plantings, stormwater capture, all of the things that help us be resilient to climate change. And we want to address needs for recreation. There's been discussion of community center, existing facility improvements that help recreation achieve their own program goals. Next slide. We took on a targeted didn't mean it to make a sound. We took on a targeted process of assessing parks in the poorest condition and categorizing them into those two groups of renovations and upgrades. You'll see this in section 9 as well and on the next slide, but we wanted to use these criteria down here at the bottom, informed by the engagement efforts of this plan, stakeholder conversations, to say, okay, which ones do we need to do first? What's most important here? We began with those poor quality parks that are categorized as such in our database, went out, looked at them, decided if they were a full renovation or upgrade, and then ran them through this ranking. Next slide. So these are projects that we see as potential full renovation and potential upgrades. At the very bottom, I put some of our active and upcoming construction design projects. We're doing a lot. We do a lot in PSF all the time. We're trying to keep up with wear and tear on our parks to make sure that everyone's able to achieve the needs that they have in our outdoor spaces, get the relief they need from climate change. And we see this list as potential things that might come your way in the future. Okay, the next slide is just our next steps, just to give you a sense. We finished the document, I'm copy editing, we're doing tweaks to the layout, we're submitting the plan in April, and then we'll be trying to use the fact that we have an updated OSRP to apply for new state funding for park projects. And I will say, you can go to the next slide. That doesn't mean that we never want to hear from you again. Comments about open space and recreation are always welcome from the public, from our committees, commissions. You can contact me directly. We do have a Summer Voice page for this project as well. And you all have had access to the draft. The final will be out soon once we have all of that graphic design and copy editing done. And I'll make sure you all get access to that once it's out. And I'm happy to take questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Allison. Anything from the committee?
Yes, John.
Always happy to ask a leading question. So I guess what does this OSRP get us? Like, what's the point of doing an OSRP?
Oh, well, I mean, I love the opportunity for us to sort of pause, take stock of where we are and see what the public needs if we're on the right track. So I think in some ways having this body of engagement as a public engagement as a resource for us to go back to as we're planning parks, as we're thinking about the network of our amenities in the city. It's a great resource. So there's that. It also gives us a chance to sort of set out that park priority list, which helps us envision what we might be building, designing in the next 7 years. And that chance to reset and say, okay, look, we did pretty much everything we set out to do in our last OSRP. Now let's take stock and set an agenda for the next 7 years. Did I miss anything, John?
Thank you. Oh, yeah. As Louisa
And
said.
it allows us to get funding, which is key. We can't build things without funding, unfortunately. So there we are.
David, go ahead.
Thank you for this. It looks like it was a lot of work. I was wondering whether you had observations with regard to how it changed from the previous open space and recreation plan.
Yeah, there are, some major accomplishments that have happened over the last 7 years. Some of those are updating our athletic fields, trying to really tackle the desire, the need for athletic amenities. And we've made, I think Dilboy is the last project in that athletic field scope of work. So that's huge and was a big focus of the last OSRP. And that has not been a big focus of this one, both from what we've heard from the public. People would always love more space for everything. I will say that we could always use more, but there has not been as much of a focus on athletic facilities or on playgrounds this time around because we're doing well. I also think the focus on community agriculture is one that we've been seeing sort of ebb and flow. We've thought, okay, is this as important? But I think we're seeing that that continues to be important. There's a need there for more community ag, and we're trying to understand how to address that need. We've also made huge improvements in our schoolyards. That has been a major accomplishment over the last 7 years. And so that's much less of a focus of this OSRP as well.
And I'm sorry, a quick follow-up. Do these hew well with what you had planned in the last one? I mean, do you do like a kind of a crosswalk? You know, it's like the last one said, here are these 12 things we want to do, and we've done, 11 of them or something like that.
Yeah, you will see that in the plan. I think it's in section 6. We have a little accomplishments table. It takes our action plan from the last one and looks at where we're at now. We published our urban forest management plan. That was a big goal. We set out, to create proactive maintenance systems for our tree canopy. We've done that, and we're continuing to do that. Yeah, lots of really amazing things that we have accomplished over the last 7 years.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Mary Jo?
Yes. I haven't had a chance to read the plan yet, so I'm going to ask a question that may be contained in it. So forgive me if that's the case. But
that's okay.
As Somerville densifies with a lot more housing being constructed, is there a new urgency for open space because we will continue to become more dense? Is that something that comes out in such a plan, or is that sort of just an undercurrent that we sense?
I think that it does. It might not be expressed directly from residents as those two things being tied, but as I'm seeing people express such an important need for affordable housing, for more housing, and I'm continuing to see that people are demanding more open space, I think that they have to come together, that there is, as you get increasing density, you need places for relief, you need places for connection to nature. And as we see both of those demands happen continually, it isn't that people are saying, it's fine, let's get rid of the parks, we'll just build houses. People still want that outdoor space, that space for relief. I think particularly as space for flood mitigation, space for cooling, space for community gathering in moments, when we've experienced COVID and we realized that parks could be a space where we could actually be outside together. I've continued to see those things paired together, that one has to happen with the other.
If I could add a little extra follow-up question. The reason I ask is that so much of the housing that is being constructed in the now is, multifamily, but of a very dense nature. You're not seeing 3-deckers like 150 years ago. So people that lived in multifamily, historically, they had sometimes yards and things like that. We have a lot more people living in multifamily that's quite urban, and that's why I asked the question.
Yeah. You might see that reflected in the desire for the layered uses in parks, because they need to serve a lot more people all at once. You might see that reflected in the fact that we have over 600 people on our community agriculture waiting list, that people don't have a backyard where they can grow food, but there is still a desire to be able to garden. So I think you could make those connections. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else on the committee with comments or questions for Allison?
I would actually just kind of like to mirror what Mary Jo was getting at. And, I live on Lincoln Parkway, so Lincoln Park is our backyard. And if you're there on a nice weekend afternoon, it is unbelievable how many people are there. And it does, and the interest in passive, recreation is really front and center. There's people that are, running around, and doing some sports, but the vast majority are picnicking and having little parties and having, Louisa.
Yeah, I think that is also partially the success of Lincoln Park. People, it's also a regional destination park that people come to. But one of the things that I think it's important for everyone in Somerville to know is that the one place where we can get more acres of open space is through private development, because our zoning code requires it. And one of the other things that our team does is to review all that private development, to push developers to create things that are not what we call latte parks, where you feel like you have to go in and spend $12 on a latte to be able to sit there, but actually serve the surrounding neighborhood. So that's one area where we've developed policy and review all of the plans, and all of the developers are required to go through us to make sure that they're creating something more than lunch space for their lab workers, or, you know, a place to have some kind of corporate social gathering. And so far we've had a lot of really good collaborations, and when they're all done, we smile, but they're not without a tussle. But we've been able to get some really good parks. Luann David Park, one of them. The Partners area, although people don't realize that is a city public space. Over here in Boynton Yards, the what is it named now, on Lake Street? There's so many of them, I can't really remember.
Martha Perry Low, yeah.
Martha Perry Low.
Is there, but that brings, is there a list of them or a map? Are they on the city map?
Yes, yes, yes.
I haven't looked at the maps in a while. I know there was a period where, you know, we were really kind of proud, you know, ourselves on, you know, the 15-minute walking circles, and you know, but I haven't looked at whether those maps have been updated to show the, you know, the pops.
Yes, so and that will be reflected in this open space plan. We actually, because we're so dense, we crush the walk shed, the 10-minute walk. But if you look on the city's website, or even on the Summer Voice page, there's a whole section that's dedicated to privately owned public spaces, and it has a list of those public spaces, as well as I think a description of the amenities and what our policy is. And we try to write it so that it's accessible to developers, lay people, and the designers that are hired by the developers to design them.
And I just remember where you're talking about on Lake Street, where that new building came up. But it's interesting because you walk by there and say, "Oh, that's kind of nice," but I'm not. Well, that one has good signage. So that one you can definitely tell this is a public space. I don't know, and maybe they're all signs like that, but you know, because sometimes it's good to be able to tell.
Part of the policy is that we require them to put in signs that say that everybody's welcome there. The other thing with that park and others is that we've been doing this for a very long time, is whenever we have the opportunity, we include stormwater capture. So that Lake Street one apparently has been really valuable to alleviating the flooding in that neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I had wanted to actually, Lisa, you touched on one of the things I wanted to give a shout out to in terms of accomplishment, you know, 7, 10, 15 years, which is all of the floodwater, stormwater mitigation that's been going on. And we can really see as these storms become more intense, just how important that was, and important to be ahead of the curveball, and we'll continue to have to be ahead of the curveball on that. So just a shout out to that layered aspect of the work.
I know, the part that often goes unseen, but is still there nonetheless.
We have also, to your comment, Heather, because I know, you know, landscape architects have been talking about this for a very, very long time. We've started putting a sign on our parks that lists the green features that our people don't necessarily see. whether that's habitat or stormwater capture. Allison has also been working on a pollinator action plan. So that is completed. So yes, I think we have really embraced the performance landscape aspect for a long time now.
Great. Any more questions from the committee? All right, Roberta, any from the general public in the queue? Roberta, I'm going to trust that's a no.
I see none. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was still muted. Thanks.
Oh, that's all right. Well, Allison, Lisa, thanks for bearing with us to the bitter end. I'm sorry you drew the short straw and we're last, but
That's
we
okay.
appreciate it and all your work.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for your support.
It was very educational, the whole meeting.
Yeah,
Great.
that's true.
Thanks, so too. All right. Thanks you both. Okay, with that, I guess, Roberta, we can open up for any general testimony or comments from the public that may or may not pertain specifically to the presentations that we saw. Is there anybody in the queue or that would like to raise their hand to make general public comments for CPC? Roberta?
We have 4 members remaining in attendance. There were more earlier, and I don't see any hands raised. Oh, I do see Lee Auspitz would like to be given permission to talk. You may unmute yourself. Lee Auspitz, are you able to unmute yourself?
That work?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
I had just one general comment about how important the housing trust is and all of the programs that do direct housing as opposed to the 20% required housing put on developers. This January, the median rent for single bedroom apartments in Somerville went up by 9%. Now, the cause of that was that there came on the market the 25-story building in Union Square, which of course had 450 units, of which 20%, 90 units were income restricted. But the others had to be luxury apartments to make up for that. And so I wanted to commend the direct spending on affordable housing independently of what the developers are asked to do. What the developers do, they have to make up for the affordable ones. So they have to raise the price of the others, which then accelerates gentrification in their own neighborhoods. Just an observation.
Great. Thank you very much for your comments and thanks for being with us tonight.
You're very welcome.
All right. Roberta, anybody else in the queue?
I see no hands raised, but I want to thank everyone for their patience in sticking with us this evening, and your comments in writing are still welcome. There was a form, which I will post a link to one more time in the chat in case anyone joined after I had posted the link the first time, which is just simply a link for giving open-ended public comment. And we also have our survey that is available through April 6th. So I hope that people will use those. And do I see Lee, did you have another comment, or did you, I thought that you had lowered your hand, but maybe. Okay, you lowered. I think Lee lowered his hand again. Okay.
All right. With that, Roberta, any other administrative business for us to take care of before I call for a motion to adjourn?
No, I think that we have covered the only thing that I would mention is that Saturday, April 5th is going to be Civic Day. So I don't remember offhand, 2 committee members who said that they would join me for Civic Day on the City Hall Plaza, and would encourage anyone else to come and check out. It will be a lot of fun, weather permitting, and will be one more chance to gather input before we close the public engagement for this process.
And I'd like to echo Roberta's request, because I'm actually one of the people that volunteered, and then forgetting that I also volunteered to table the Conservation Commission's table at the same event. So I can dash back and forth between the two, or be there for the entire event. But if someone else can step up, I would appreciate that.
Which day was that again? Saturday?
Saturday,
April 5th.
April 5th. I guess I signed up to do something at the East Somerville Library tomorrow. Table.
Yes.
I was gonna ask, do I just show up, or do I need to get stuff and?
Just show up. I will be there. I'll have the table all set up. All you have to do is stand there and look pretty.
Okay.
Nice gig, Eric.
Yeah. I'll see David about Saturday, April 5th.
Yeah, it's a good event. I've done it the last 2 or 3 years.
I did that last year, but I remember getting stuck in. I had to show up late for some reason. I was stuck down in the South Shore. But let's see.
I kind of wish the city did it a little bit later, when the weather would be more reliably, mild. But maybe it'll be nice.
One year we did it indoors, 1 year outdoors. It worked okay both ways. I appreciate that it happens to fall just in time for us to be able to incorporate input that we gather for our public engagement. So.
All right. Any other business, Roberta?
That's all I have.
All right. With that, I think I can ask for a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion to adjourn.
In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roberta, please call the roll.
Heather.
Yes.
Michael.
Aye.
Eric.
Yes.
Mary Jo.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Carlos.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
And Ryan.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for the full house and for your engagement. This was great.
Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Roberta.
Thank you.
All right.
Night.
Take care.
Bye-bye.